Hey everybody, good morning. Welcome to another week of devotions here on the Morning Devo with Beau. Hope you guys are good. My name's Beau Willette. So very French Canadian name. One that's, in these parts, it's not a very common name for sure, but just saying things in French would be kind of odd in this neck of the woods. So, a name like Willette would be very kind of different over here. I should say in the southern parts of the United States, where you go up north and east and it'd be a little more normal. People go, Willette? Oh, okay. I kind of get that. And you go a little more north and a little more east, and you'll get to Canada, and you'll get to Montreal, and you'll get to, the area of Quebec, and all of a sudden you'll find a bunch of Willettes. So very cool. It's kind of neat when you watch. I remember watching the United States the Canadian women's team one year play in the Olympics, and noticing that there is a Caroline Willette who just, I think, was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame recently with that last name. So, yeah, Willette might not be common in this neck of the woods, but in other parts of the world, it is. And isn't that weird? That's how the world works. You might be in an area where you're not very, you're kind of a little out, of what would, but, maybe if you went to another area, all of a sudden your last name would be, very popular. Anyway, Exodus 20 today on the devotion, and excited to be with you guys. I did put up a picture for this week, my picture of the week, if you will. It's the last show that I went to, heavy metal show. I guess you would say that way what kind of music it was. It was kind of a metal show, and took a wonderful young man with me that I've been blessed to be his mentor for a long period of time. But we went to a show, and it was really fun to be there, and it was a nice little tiny place, and I've been there before, but super small, super crowded, and man, so all you see is like lights and people's heads, and you see a band up there, but boy, it was we were all real close and packed in. It was very fun. It reminded me of growing up, going to clubs out in Southern California. Just the small, kind of dingy, darky, kind of smelly because everybody's so close together vibe. So pretty cool. Anyway, it's neat to have access to God. And it's fun when you're at a concert and you have access to the band. A lot of concerts you go to and you have no access to the stage because there's a barrier there. But when that barrier is not there, it's really cool. You feel a very intimate kind of relationship with the musicians. And just as God, through the Messiah, destroyed the barrier between God and human beings, there is no longer a distance between us. We can come boldly, it says, to the throne of grace. When the Messiah, Jesus, was being crucified, there was a veil that was in the temple separating the most holy place with the other room that was right there with it. There was a giant veil. You couldn't go into the most holy place. And that veil was torn from top to bottom. Quite a size veil it was, too. But it's just the idea of you have access now. I think that's a cool picture. And that's what I thought of when I was at the concert, was that it's so neat when there's no barriers and you just have access to the composer. And God is the great composer, man. Wow. We can thank him today. So, okay, on the Devo, let's read through, because I love to read through the Bible, Exodus 20. And this is a big one. It's interesting. The God of the Bible is drawing close to humanity, even though there's an incredible distance ever since Adam and Eve fell. All and so there's this move of God always to draw near to humanity and to make a way for there to be fellowship. Now there is these covenants that have been made with Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. It's kind of been extending. We see that the same covenant that was given to Abraham is given to Isaac and given to Jacob, etc. And then Jacob has a bunch of kids, and those kids move to Egypt and they become enslaved, but they populate and they become a nation, a giant group of people called Israel or the Hebrews, or it's interchangeable too in the Bible, Jews. And you'll see that as well. And so anyway, you can do careful studies of that too, just to find out what is being meant when it says Jews and what's being meant when it says Israel, and what's the context, and is it meaning different people? When is it meaning different people? When is it meaning the same people? This whole idea. Okay, but now God makes a covenant with the nation. He's going to enter into in a sense, a more intimate relationship with them. And it's going to be one where God will draw close to this nation, which is fascinating. I mean, a real fascinating. Sometimes you think like, hey, you're in a country that is a nation under God. Well, this is truly a nation under God, if that makes sense. Like, this is what it looks like. If you're going to be a nation under God, then there's going to be a covenant relationship that's going to take place. There's going to be an agreeing with one another of what kind of relationship this is going to be. It's not just a cliche to say a nation under God. You don't just say that and there's no covenant. It'd be like saying, hey, I'm in a marriage, but there's no vows. Like we don't really have any agreement at all. Like, that doesn't make any sense. In relational covenant, meaning when you're in a relationship with someone, you have agreements with them. This is what I agree to, and they say this is what I agree to, and then they enter into that. They say yes to it. That's a relationship. But if you just said, hey, I'm in a relationship, but there's no definition of what that means, then hey, I don't think you're really in a relationship. Sounds like a person's an acquaintance. So when we say we're a nation under God, what does that mean? Well, we're going to see what it means actually biblically to say nation under God. I don't think we fit it, as far as the United States goes, meaning we haven't entered into a covenant with God like this. So this is kind of the real deal, if you will. So it says, then God gave all the people these instructions. I am the Lord your God who rescued you from the land of Egypt, the place of your slavery. Okay, so God does something for this group of people. He delivers them. He delivers them out of the hand of slavery. And he shows himself faithful to his promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that he would give them a land, that they would be a people. It says, you must not have any other God before me. You must not make for yourself an idol of any kind or an image of anything in the heavens or on earth or in the sea. You must not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, who will not tolerate your affection for any other gods. I love that. What is my affection? Where is my affection? That's kind of neat. Who do I love to be around? As an individual, do I love to draw near to God? Do I want to draw near to the true and living God? Or do I want to draw near to a God that I've made up in my brain? A God that I just kind of, as I understand him, meaning not so much as I understand him today, but what I'm talking about is like one that's just made up understand. So it's like I'm just making them up as I go. I mean, let's face it, we all have an understanding today of the true and living God. Like me and you have a understanding of the biblical text. We might have an understanding of the true and living God, of Jesus. So yeah, we're living today as understanding God as, as we know him today from his word. But there's some people that say God is, I understand him, and they're just making up kind of a God. They're just making up something in their brain. But what has my affection? Isn't that interesting? In order to have my affection, it's got to be a person. It's kind of interesting that the God of the Bible is making it very clear that there is a personhood with the deity. It's not just conceptual in your brain, but it's relational. I don't have affection with energy. I think it's cool. I like lights. I think that's cool. But I don't have an affection, but I do have an affection towards a person. And so you could see that God is revealing more of what he's like in these commandments, and it really helps me to think, where's my affection today? And it says, I lay the sins of the parents upon their children. The entire family is affected, even children in the third and fourth generations of those who reject me. But I lavish unfailing love for 1,000 generations on those who love me and obey my commandments. This is one that bothers people, this passage. I don't see a problem with it at all because it makes sense to our world. The sins of the parents are upon the children. The entire family is affected, even children in the third and fourth generations. Is this true? Is Adam and Eve's sin, has it affected us? Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, is the same sin in Adam and Eve and in you? Yep. And we're a lot further than the third and fourth generation. Yeah, what God's saying is that, I don't just acquit sin. I don't just ignore it. I don't just, I don't just turn a blind eye. No. The sin of the parents is going to move on into the children. It's going to move on into this children and that children. Yeah, you make decisions and go that way. It's going to affect, your family line. This is what our world right now, our culture battles don't get. This is where we're blind. We don't understand that our decisions today affect the future in massive ways, the progeny of the descendants. We are very so focused on what is good for me right now. What do I want right now? How do I feel? How do I want to identify? How do I want to think of myself? We're not thinking about future generation at all. We're not thinking about anything like that. We're thinking about me and what makes me happy. And so that's what it's saying. It's just going to keep perpetuating. But it says God will show mercy. Isn't that cool? God will have mercy on you. I love what it said there. Did you read that? It said he'll lavish unfailing love, for 1,000 generations, a lot more than the third and fourth and all that, 1,000 generations on those who love me and obey my commandments. Those who want to come into covenant with me, who want a relationship with me, man, dude, I'll be gracious. I'll be loving. I will totally be stoked, And, you see God's amazing grace there, right? Yeah, you guys, your sin is going to follow you. The sins of the parents are going to follow into the sins. People always say, man, do I have a generational curse? Well, yeah, you do. It's called Adam and Eve. That's the generational curse. I mean, if you're into this, my great grandma did something weird and now it's on my family. I wouldn't get into that. That's kind of, I would say, a little whack. But when it comes to every generation under the curse of God, under the wrath of God, cursed because we can't obey the law, we can't do things right, we can't live a righteous life. Yeah, we're under it for sure. All of like sheep have gone astray, each one their own way. But God's rich in mercy. It says that. So he just lays out the fact, man. I'm not going to ignore your idolatry, but I'm going to have grace on you to those who come into relationship with me. God can't ignore sin. So you must not misuse the name of the Lord your God. The Lord will not let you go unpunished if you misuse his name. The name of God, we saw the I am, Yahweh, the God who sees, right? The everlasting, the almighty God. We've seen these names for God in the Bible. We're not to misuse those. We're not to treat them trivially. Many people treat the name of the Lord trivially. Jesus shouldn't be treated trivially. And this is the idea, is when it comes to the deity, there should be a reverence. And this is something, boy, have I broke. Growing up, I don't think I had any reverence for God, gods, goddesses, anything like that. Destroyed them verbally. Said very bad things, evil things, harsh things, debauched things. And this is what God's saying is, do you say that about someone who you're affectionate with? How do you use your spouse's name? Do you treat it trivially? No. When you're in relationship with someone, their name is special. And it says, remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath day of rest dedicated to the Lord your God. And on that day, no one in your household may do any work. This includes you, your sons and daughters, your male and female servants, your livestock, and any foreigners living among you. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth and the sea and everything in them, and on the seventh day he rested. That is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day to set it apart as holy. Very cool thing, right? To have that day of rest for the people of Israel. That they would have this covenant that would be kind of a special system. They would have 6 days in which they would work, and then on the seventh day, they would take a rest, a holy separation, if you will, separating themselves to God, always remembering the deliverance that they had from Egypt, that God delivered them, and they were to go in that wilderness and be separated to worship the Lord. And so God says, you know what? You're going to remember that all the time. I'm going to give you a day where you guys just do that. You have a time. It's separated to me. It's a holy day. Fix your eyes on me. Remember the good things that I've accomplished and done in your life so we can have some time together. I guess it would be kind of like a date night, that what we call like a date night, where you have a time of kind of consecration with your covenant partner, where you have a time where you separate yourself from the norm and you go and do something with them. And you focus on one another, spending time together. This is kind of the cool thing. Is God, you see this pattern where God says, hey, let's have this time. Isn't that neat? Where do we get our ideas from? Isn't that interesting? That a lot of what we do in our lives, whether you know God, whether you don't know God, whether you call yourself a Christian, whether you call yourself an atheist, comes from the Bible. This kind of idea of separating yourself and creating yourself with the one that you love. Yeah, a Sabbath, a special time. Crazy. It blows my mind how much that we live according, or we get our stuff from this. We just don't know. And I didn't know growing up. That's why I was kind of blown away when I first read it. So it says, honor your father and mother, then you will live long, full life in the land the Lord your God is giving you. Hey, where else is this passage quoted? I'm going to say in the New Testament. Do you know? That whole section of verse 12 is quoted somewhere in one of the writings of Paul. I'll let you guys kind of find out. It says, you must not murder. You must not commit adultery. You must not steal. You must not testify falsely against your neighbor. You must not covet your neighbor's house. You must not covet your neighbor's wife, male or female servant, ox or donkey, or anything else that belongs to your neighbor. So very cool. I love these, man. When I first read them, when I was around 17, I remember reading this. I was a lifeguard. And I remember reading this, just thinking, like, underlining it all and going like, wow, I guess I'm out. I guess I don't do much of the covenant, do I? I find myself failing at all of them. Not murdering. Certainly I could have said, hey, I never murdered anybody, but boy, did I have some hate in the heart. And then you must not commit adultery. I could say, well, I'm not even married. But I also knew that, boy, my lust, man, was unbridled in that brain of mine. You must not steal. I go, man, I never robbed a bank. But boy, I wanted everything. And there was times where I did take stuff. And it says you must not testify falsely against your neighbor. I knew I lied. And that's like, it says you must not covet your neighbor's house. And I said, man, I live in a world of coveting. Southern California is the coveting capital of the world. That's what we learn to do best, is covet. We covet everything. We covet your daughter. We covet your mom. We covet your house. We covet the Mercedes. We covet the beach. We covet, you know what I mean? We covet everything. We covet your clothes. We covet, name it. We covet your hairstyle. We covet the way your body looks. We covet all things. We are pros at coveting for sure in the world, So I don't know if you could read the 10 Commandments right there and just kind of go, wow, man, I kind of chunk at them too. I have many idols in my life. I've made up many gods. I have many things that I'm affectionate towards, which I shouldn't be affectionate towards. If you get too affectionate towards marijuana, then you become the marijuana fiend, right? If you get too affectionate towards alcohol, then you become an alcoholic. Right? That becomes everything to you. If you become too affectionate towards food, right? Then food becomes everything. If you get too affectionate towards even inner things, you want to feed your pride or feed your fear, feed your insecurities. Those things dominate. And those become little invisible idols that rule your world. It's amazing how many idols are there. And, that have and that kind of we're affectionate towards, and we have to learn how to say no and learn how to come to God and learn how to say, God, help me to be affectionate towards you, towards your word, to love you, to love what you've done and how you've delivered and how you've set free and how you work. Let me love your ways, right? His pathways are pathways to peace. I think it says where in the Proverbs, right? Pathways to peace. Am I wanting to hold on to that, hold fast to that? And because we're all holding fast to something. And we all have a list of 10 commandments or some form of commandments that we're living by. So this is the deity's covenant list. This is what the covenant's going to be based off of. And it says, when the people heard the thunder and the loud blast of the ram's horn, they saw the flashes of lightning and the smoke billowing from the mountain, they stood at a distance, trembling in fear. So this was no little deal. This was no small deal. This was no like, oh, so nice, right? This was hardcore, like, oh my gosh. When you're in the presence of God, I guess it's pretty radical. And I'm not sure you would want it. It sounds pretty scary. Trembling with fear, and they said to Moses, you speak to us, we will listen to you, but don't let God speak directly to us or we will die. So there definitely was an emotional reaction to listening, just hearing God. And there was a awe that the people had and a fear. And I'm sure it was when you're around holiness, you could feel pretty yucky with all your sin. And I'm sure all that was happening. And it says, "Don't be afraid," Moses answered for them, "for God has come in this way to test you, and so that you fear him and will keep you from sinning." Hey, God has shown just a little bit of himself to you guys, so that you understand who you're dealing with. This isn't something we're making up. This isn't something we're just saying, "Hey, this is our God. Check him out. Look at him." And they show you a spoon. This is our God. It's this spoon right here. Call the spoon whatever. No, this is something magnificent that hovers over a mountain at that. Something very special was taking place. And the whole idea is draw close, right? It's okay. God, you're safe with God, but you need to trust him. You need to enter in. And you see this kind of interesting thing in our world today. It's either you come to God and it's scary because God will unveil all your yuck. He will unpack all your garbage. And so a lot of us want to run from that. We're running. No, God, no, God, no, God. I'm going to fight God all the time. I'm going to fight him everywhere. I'm going to go to my university. I'm going to fight against God. Because, man, you just want to run, right? Because all of a sudden you want to do what you want to do. You want to be autonomous. You want to go do what you want to do. You want to live the way you want to live. You want to find people that accept you the way you are. You want to da-da-da-da-da. All this stuff, all this lingo, right? All you want to do what you want to do. Last thing I want to do is draw close, because what if I'm wrong? What if God says no? What if God says I'm not well pleased with that? See, we don't want to be confronted with our defects. We don't want to believe that we have defects. We want to believe that we are okay, that we're in the right. And so in the world we run. We run from the deity, and we make up a deity of our own kind. Yeah, he's kind of like what we're used to growing up, but he's only got a little changes. He accepts me the way I am. He lets me do whatever I want to do. This whole thing. And we have the God as we understand him. And that's what a lot of is happening in our world. But it's interesting that the only way we really get healed is if we face we need to have the courage to come to God and say, "God, I'm wrong. And I realize I'm wrong, and I realize I need to be changed. And that I need you to do a work of changing me. And that I'm the one who's off." And I can face that defect now. I can face that fear of being defective. Fear of being in the wrong. And I could face it knowing that drawing close to God not only reveals it, but he also forgives it. And that's everything. Is that he forgives my sin. And so drawing close to the Lord, I would imagine, is scary for the people of Israel as it is for us. There's something that is happening. There's a revealing of things, but there also is the forgiveness that is there if we humble ourselves and we come. And we come humbly. When we come into the house of the Lord, when we come into even church, there should be a reverence and a godly fear. Meaning a humility, knowing that you and me too haven't lived up to the 10 Commandments as well. And we are super grateful for the forgiveness that has been given to us through the wonderful child that would be born, right? The Messiah. And that's been given to us, that forgiveness. And so we have incredible joy. So do you see the beautiful balance in the human heart that the good news brings? It brings the humility that's needed in us human beings, because without humility, we become prideful pomps in this world, and we think that we got it together. But it also brings incredible joy and exaltation and raising up through the forgiveness that's given in Christ, that gives us great peace and gives us a great stability and gives us great confidence, which is needed, because without that confidence and peace and stability, we fall into despair. And so the good news regulates human beings perfectly. That's what the good news does to the human heart. It regulates us absolutely in the right. Without it, we can look at the world and we can see what happens when we're not being moved by the gospel. We become prideful, we become despairing, we become depressed, we become envious, and all that. Hey, Francisco, man, yeah, that's right. Better late than never, bro. Hey, man, hope you guys are well. It's hot out here, Francisco. Totally toasty. So hopefully you guys are in SoCal or getting a little better weather. Okay, Exodus 20 in the books. Super cool, right? So we finish up the chapter, and it says, "And the Lord said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel. You saw for yourselves that I spoke to you from heaven. Remember, you must not make any idols of silver or gold to rival me. Build for me an altar made of earth and offer your sacrifices to me, your burnt offerings and peace offerings, your sheep and goats and your cattle. Build my altar wherever I cause my name to be remembered, and I will come to you and bless you. And if you use stones to build my altar, use only natural uncut stones. Do not shape the stones with a tool, for that would make the altar unfit for holy use. And do not approach my altar by going up steps. If you do, someone might look up under your clothing and see your nakedness." Okay, so there's a couple little things that I think that are very cool. It's a great study, by the way, of just these altars that were made before the tabernacle or the temple, and the offerings that were sacrificed before we see the law, like in the book of Leviticus, of offerings. Remember, offerings means to bring near. A way for people were drawing close to God through, they knew they needed to bring an offering to God because it was something that they deserved. They deserved a judgment. And so they were bringing offerings to God to say, hey, this is a substitutionary sacrifice for me. That was going on. But I want you to see that whole stone thing is pretty cool, right? Hey, don't put your effort into carving these stones out. Make something elaborate. You know, sometimes we think we need to bring something elaborate to God. Like, oh, we need to bring some amazing, artwork, of the rocks, and we're going to build this incredibly looking, pulpit, or this incredible looking thing, and this incredible looking, worship center, and this incredible looking thing. And God says, no, I just want you to bring like the rocks, the natural rocks. Could you just bring the natural rocks, please? Just make it a nature thing. You know what I love about that? It's like something you can't boast in at all. When you go to make your offering to the Lord, don't look around and go, look what I've built. Boy, how amazing. Boy, look at the music I played. Boy, am I so good. Boy, look at the pulpit. Look at the stage. Look at this. Look at the lights. Look at that. Look at this. Look, oh my God, what a show. Man, this is amazing. Boy, are we good. Boy, is it amazing. Woo! What a message to our church world today, right? Meaning the focus needs to be on God, not on the rocks, not on all your carvings. Don't make something elaborate where you're going up a giant pyramid, right? Where it's like everybody sees that you're nude, dude. Everybody sees you, you're exposed, no, have a reverence, be clothed, understand that there has to be a covering for your sin. Don't be all confident and cocky, in your walk up to the pyramid. Oh, I'm going to go approach the gods. I'm so confident, like they did in the Tower of Babel situation, right? We're going to build it up to the Lord. We're that good. Again, the idea of confidence and arrogance and, boasting and all those kind of things. Man, it's a real word. That do I really go to church to enjoy fellowship with brothers and sisters, learn from them, connect with God through worshiping Him, giving Him an offering of the fruit of my lips? Or am I there for the band? Am I there for the music? Or am I there because he's a really eloquent teacher, man? That's it. Boy, I love his words. I could listen to him all day, kind of thing. Or, boy, that church building's amazing. Look at it. They got crystal going on, and they got, God, all this beautiful artwork and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and on and on and on. Have you ever heard yourself say that? Have you ever heard someone else talk that way? Maybe the Lord's just going to say, wrong. Off. Yeah. Let's keep things a little simple. Let's keep things focused on Jesus. Focused on our God, not on our pride, not on what we've built. When worshiping God, God says, I want you to worship me where you're not enamored by everything outside of you, all the things. I don't want you to see the things you've built, and I want you to be focused on the Lord. Man, that's really cool. And I think there's something to kind of contemplate with that in today's church life. That has our church buildings and the worship centers, and the stage, and the this, and the walls, and the this, and then that. Has it gotten to a point where it's become a distraction from really worshiping the true and living God? Or are we just filled with pride in what we've built, or an arrogance, instead of just really looking at the beauty of the invisible God? The beauty of the invisible God. Learning to be affectionate towards God, not towards what I've built with my hands, so that there's no pride that's involved in my worship. Man, that's a real thing to think about, today. And one that hopefully we all take a moment and think through that when it comes to our church life experience. And ask God to forgive our hearts for those moments where we've come in to worship Him and we're fixated on how good we've done, or da-da-da-da-da, or these kind of things. Instead of just, it's about God. He is the one I want to be affectionate with today. So, okay. Very cool chapter. Man, I love this chapter. Laura, good song. I'm coming back to the heart of worship. Oh boy. Yes. That is what that's all about, isn't it? That whole stone thing, and don't be walking up the old stairs. And that's right. Coming back to the true heart of worship. Okay, you guys have a great day. Take care. We'll talk to you guys later, okay? Bye-bye.